Hi, everyone. Are we online? Hope so. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this rather unusual LABCON. I'm Philip Crisp, and beside me is Eva Crisp, and I'll be giving the presentation, and Eva will be keeping a close eye on me and checking that I get everything right. And she'll also be monitoring the chat box for questions and will be involved in things later on. So first of all, a housekeeping thing, if you have questions, please put them into the chat box and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the presentation. And if for some reason we can't get to your question, then please just email it to team@riskassess.com.au. So team@riskassess.com.au, and we'll do our best to get back to you and provide you with an answer. We'll try to give you as many tips and tricks as we can pack into 45 minutes. So we'll do our best there, and we hope that this will benefit both new and experienced users. So we'll now move across to a PowerPoint presentation and we'll share the screen. So you should be able to see what is happening. Okay. Right. Here is the beginning. Hopefully you can all see that. It seems strange doing it this way, not in the flesh, but here we go. All right, so we're looking at the latest tips and tricks for everybody, really, whether you're new or whether you're experienced. And before we really begin, I thought we'd give you an update on RiskAssess. We now have in Victoria 544 schools that are using it, and that's 93% of all high schools in Victoria. And that's of the 2,300 schools we have in total that are using RiskAssess everywhere. In Victoria, we have 152 schools also using the student version of the software, which is the student RiskAssess, and that's a quarter, just over a quarter of all the schools in Victoria. And with primary RiskAssess, sadly, we have no schools in Victoria using it, but we've got 190 schools, mostly in New South Wales, that are using it. And we're optimistic that someday some schools in Victoria will also pick up on primary RiskAssess. Now, I won't be dealing with disposal in this presentation, although it is one of our most recent advances and seriously is one of our biggest set of tips and tricks. The reason is the next session will be having a presentation dedicated to that. So if you're interested, then you can come along to that one. And I believe you can look at these things for up to a year afterwards on the website. The disposal information now is available for all 3,000 chemicals and solutions that we have in RiskAssess. And we've also created a general guide on the logic and how to do it. And we've also got another document on waste containers. And if you look down the bottom here, you can see the sort of information that we now have in RiskAssess for disposal. At the bottom right-hand corner here, you can see this is for a typical chemical, methyl ethyl ketone. We have the disposal information advising you to retain it in a flammable liquids cabinet, if possible in original packaging, because that won't be leaking much. And that would be for collection for a waste service. Or if you want to, you can dissolve it in a large volume of water and pour it down the drain. Residues need to be placed in a non-halogenated organic waste container, and that should be in a flammable liquids cabinet because it's just as flammable as a waste as it ever was as the original chemical. So that's what we have now for all 3,000 chemicals, and we'll move on now to all of the other non-disposal tips and tricks. Okay, you can see the menu here of what we're going to be dealing with, and we've grouped the tips and tricks into bunches. The first bunch is for the shortcuts that you should hopefully be aware of, and that is basically to make your life easier and faster. Then we've got Some extra things that we've done lately to improve the scheduling system, particularly the new scheduling search. There are tools that some people seem not to be aware of, and this allows you to do all sorts of exciting things, and we'll try to show you some of those. There are resources that are often not seen, and they're sometimes hidden a bit down the bottom, so we'll try to go through the various resources that we have available for you now. And we'll look then at some tips and tricks for labelling. You can now do things like multiple chemicals on a sheet. And you can also do a whole lot of labels that are not actually things that would be for chemicals. There are operations that you should be aware of as to how to do things like rescheduling experiments and archiving them. So we'll look at those. And there's a little bit of stuff on student risk assess we should mention, because about a quarter of the schools, and I guess about a quarter of you, will also be involved with student risk assess. And there are some issues with the multiple classes on updating things and making modifiable copies that are worth explaining, I think. So what we'll do at this stage is we'll move to the RiskAssess website, and we'll go through each of these items in each of the groupings here and explain to you how they all work. So let's hop across now to the RiskAssess website. Here we are. All right. I'll also swap over to another page to check I get this right. Are you checking on me,
Yep.
Eva, that I'm doing all this? I haven't
already.
made any bad mistakes yet.
Yep.
All right, this is good. Okay, first of all, you know there's just a single login for everybody at the school, and the way you find things in risk assessment in RiskAssess is it's like Google. You can put in keywords for author, teacher, year group, experiment name, procedure. You can search on different date ranges, and that allows you to find things. The next trick is that if you want to search for chemicals or bits of equipment for that matter, you can put in simplified things like for chemicals. You can put in HCl if you want to find all of the hydrochloric acid. And here they all pop up. And you can choose whichever concentration of hydrochloric acid you want. Next trick is that I hope everybody knows, you can just click on the bar up the top, and it takes you back always to the home page. That's a pretty quick and easy way to navigate around, and I use that a lot. The next thing is if you're searching for chemicals, and it works for other databases as well, if you put in phenol pH, there aren't many things in the database that begin with phenol pH, so you don't need to remember the spelling of phenolphthalein, and here you are, they all pop up. So that's one simple thing. Next, you can have a look at the icons on the side here, and you'll see there are lots of different icons. If you hover over them, it actually explains what it is. And the icons are, first of all, if it has a pen on paper, it means that it is a risk assessment in an editable format, and you can change it and update it. If it looks like this is meant to be a pen on, meant to be like a scribble of a signature, it means it's been partially signed. So you can spot that one pretty easily. Those ones obviously need to be signed again before they then turn into a little filing cabinet icon, which is the fully signed document, which is converted to a PDF file and is immutable and serves as a legal record. Now, if you reschedule one of these archived documents, then it appears as a filing cabinet with a little clock in the top corner to show you that something has happened to it and it's moved to another date. So there are also, you should be aware, best school risk assessments. This is a separate library that you now have where you can put risk assessments that are ones that you would like to use as pro formas for the next generation of risk assessments. You can make modifiable copies of these, and they serve as a really good starting point for your work for other experiments with other classes. Now, if you have a look at that, you can click on all the best risk assessments, and they show up here in a little box, and you'll see there's another icon, this little gold star. This indicates that it is a best risk assessment, so that's worth knowing. Going back to the home page, if we go into a risk assessment that is still in an editable format, there are, first of all, lots of help documents that many people seem not to be aware of here. They're usually shown in a different color. Commonly, it's a dark blue. And if you click on something like users, then boom, a little window opens and explains all of the different users for RiskAssess. If you click on training, you see the same sort of thing for the training codes, so you can see what they all mean. If you click on GHS data, you get a story about the GHS. What else have we got? Oh, and something like here, often for the disposal, we'll reference a particular waste container. So if you click on that, boom, it goes to the appropriate section of the document on waste containers. So that is also readily available. And if you go down to the section on certification, there are help documents for the school's risk matrix. It shows here all of the different risk matrices that are available, and you can pick whichever one you want to use. You can also click on the inherent level of risk. Okay, this is the risk level with no control measures in place. And we give you some examples of what that might be. You can also click on routine procedures, because remember, the way RiskAssess works is that you might have quite a high level of inherent risk, but you put in place control measures which are designed to reduce the risk level to low risk. And that is in conjunction with the routine procedures that are in the classroom all the time. So here's a list of some routine procedures. The school may adopt a different set of these, but this offers a starting point anyway for you to think about. So all those are available as help functions. And if we go back to the form that you fill in, let's go back here. This is if we want to make some changes to it. You should note that in the text reference or procedure section, you can copy a particular location on the web into the procedure box, and that will be converted to a hot link in the risk assessment. And if you ever want to see that, you can just click on it and boom, you'll jump to a web page that has that there. Now that is really useful if you want to include more procedural details or diagrams or photos or safety data sheets. You can also include those in there. So quite a few schools are using that now, and I think there's a lot of scope for doing more of that. Okay, let's go back to the home page, and we'll have a look at the scheduling system now, and we can show you some exciting things there. We go to the last 4 weeks. You can, for that period, or if you want to, you can choose any dates and enter any date range you like, and then you can click on download for Excel, and all of the information is downloaded as a CSV file and with comma separated values, and you can open that in Excel or other software, and you can manipulate it all, and you can do some, complicated analysis or massaging of data to get whatever you might need. If there are any Queenslanders here, they have to prepare lists of experiments they do that have high or extreme inherent level of risk. The next thing is that it's not showing here, but if someone now double books a particular room for a particular period, a little yellow exclamation mark appears as a warning that in fact there is a double booking. You can still go ahead and do it, but it's visible that there is a potential conflict there. And the new scheduling search for scheduling is also very useful. Lots of people wanted that, so James has worked busily on that to create it. And if you want to search for the period, room, year group, teacher, or experiment and procedure, you can just enter keywords there. So if you enter, let's say, Eva, then it shows all of the risk assessments that have, in this case, the teacher name Eva Crisp. And you can clear that, say, back to where you were before. Now, let's go back to our home page, and there are lots of tools here that people should be aware of and which are pretty useful. First of all, if you want to send us some money, which is really important, you can download a renewal invoice at any time you like. Sometimes people want to do this at odd times to pay ahead or whatever. You can also synchronize your staff and student risk assess renewal dates. That is a convenient thing because then people can just pay everything in just one go once a year. If you go down here, there are now possibilities for customizing your year group list, which is a convenient thing if you don't like the year groups that we've shown here. You can delete any of these that you want to, and you can insert any new ones. So you can, let's suppose in year 11, you don't like science in practice, you can enter instead 11 something new, and save that. When you go back to your homepage or anywhere else where you get to select year group, you'll now see, if you go down to 11, here we are, that's been replaced with new. So that's a useful trick to customize it for the subjects that your school actually is involved in giving. Let's go back to our tools now, and we can go down to the defaults that you can set for searching. Normally, the library that is searched is the library of all risk assessments, but if you want to, you can switch it over to the best school risk assessments. That might be useful at the beginning of the year when you want all of the staff to not use what they were doing before, but use some optimized best risk assessment as the starting point for their new ones. Also, if you don't like looking in the last 18 months, you can change that to the last calendar year or the current calendar year or anything you like. Now, going back to the tools again, what else have we got down in here? Backups, very important. Now, RiskAssess has never lost anything in the last, 14 years that it's been operating, but we do not guarantee to preserve all of your risk assessments forever. You should back them up and store them as part of your school's long-term records. And you'll see down here, there are places where you can click on backups for each year that your school has been using RiskAssess. In this case, we've got about 10 of these backups, annual backups that we could that you could download. And it's also a good idea as you go through a teaching year that you back up the risk assessments at intervals, say at the end of each teaching session. Now, when you request a backup, what happens is an email is sent to the contact person. It may take a few minutes for this to happen because we're using our backup server on this one to generate all the backup information. It has to do a bit of processing there. And that will be sent to the contact person as a link, and then that person can then just click on the link and download the backup as a zip file. And we explain the format and how it all works here. So backups, very important. You should be backing up all of your risk assessments. Now, if we go to
only
tools
the
again.
archived ones.
Good point. Thank you, Eva. When you do the backup, only risk assessments that have been archived that have the full complement of signatures, which is usually 2, but maybe 3 if it's a high or extreme risk, inherent risk experiment, only those ones will be backed up. So ones that are in editable format and can still be changed are not part of your record because they do not provide anything like the same quality of a legal record that you did do what is required by law, which is to carry out a risk assessment before you do an experiment. Good, thank you for that.
And you're stock taking.
Now let's go back to tools and stock taking. Okay, you can do stock taking. And if you want to look at, let's say, all the chemicals that have been used in the last 3 years, hang on, click on this. What's it do? Oh, wait a minute, I'm forgetting here. It downloads the file as a CSV file. It doesn't leap to it. You've got to open that file. And if you do that, it pops open. I've got Excel set up here to open the CSV files. And you can then, let's expand that one a little bit. You can see the chemicals that have been used, when they were last used, and how many times they've been used. So that is useful, especially if you want to get rid of things that haven't been used for a very long time. And you can use it also to get an idea of what is the usage for ordering and stock and inventory levels. Okay, we'll not save that one, and that can go away. I think that's all the ones that I have on in the tools section. Let's move on to the resources. Now we have lots of lovely resources in RiskAssess, and I'll show you how to find those. All right, down the bottom of every page, and we should improve on this, it's hidden in the grass. There are learning resources and there are questions and answers. Let's have a look at the learning resources first of all. We have user guides here for the different versions. We have a legal section where we explain what is required by law to do risk assessments, a special WA thing because things are happening over there, the requirements for the Australian curriculum. Then there's a section on the logic and process, and this is including the first chapter in my wondrous book on safety in schools, and there are other things there as well as the book again. Chemical safety, there's a whole section there on things to do with the GHS and codes and so on. There's also a pro forma for creating a chemical register that you might find useful. I should say that's one thing that we'll be working on in the future to incorporate into RiskAssess, a chemical register and an SDS referencing system. Disposal is there. Biological safety, Eva put together some documents on safe culturing of microorganisms and safe dissection activities. There's a whole lot of brochures for RiskAssess, student RiskAssess, primary RiskAssess, and there are videos. There's a getting started with RiskAssess video, which is very useful for new staff who come to a school and are not familiar with the basics of RiskAssess. And there's a whole lot of presentations on RiskAssess. You can go back through history here and you'll see at the top is in fact RiskAssess, latest tips and tricks for new and experienced users. This is the one that we're running at the moment. So you can go there and download that. So that's the first place where you can find resources. Second place is down in the grass here. We have questions and answers. And if you search on something like STS, boom, you see all of the documents that we have there. And you might want to know, what is the validity period for a safety data sheet? Should you use third-party SDSs and mini SDSs? We have answers to these sorts of common questions in there. Okay, next we have in the bar here that separates the body of it from the news. We have, first of all, my wonderful book on safety in schools, and you can go there and read any chapters that you can like. You download them or you can just read them online. If you suffer from insomnia, this is the perfect way to cure that problem. And you can have a look at something like, I don't know, how chemicals cause injury, and you jump straight to the document on that one, which gives you a little potted summary of how things can be bad for you. So that's the idea there. That's the next resource. What else have we got? Oh, the Getting Started video. That
Don't click on it.
I showed you before, and that's available also just from your home page. What else do we have?
You want to talk about the ebook publishers?
The ebook publishers, right. 2 ebook publishers, Style and Education Perfect, have created libraries of pro forma risk assessments for all of the experiments that they have in their ebooks. And these are available if you are subscribing to Style and to Education Perfect only. Otherwise, you don't see it. But they then appear as another library here, and there would be one called Style and there'd be one called Education Perfect. But if you're not subscribing, you don't see that. If you are a subscriber, you can click on that, and it works just the same sort of way as all of the other the 2 existing libraries in RiskAssess. Now, what else have we got? That's labels now. All right, we're on to labels. We've been doing lots of fun things with labeling. First of all, you should understand, for new people who are coming to RiskAssess, there are 2 different ways you can label. The first is using standard labels, and second is custom labels. Now, the standard labels access all the information in our chemical database, and they are for pure substances and aqueous solutions. There are a few other little oddball things in there, but that's nearly all. And custom labels are for mixtures of chemicals that you might create, because there's an infinite number of those available, and also for commercial products. So let's look at the standard labeling first of all. The latest exciting thing is that you can print label sheets with lots of different chemicals on the one page. So if you want to do, let's say, hydrochloric acid labels, you might want to go here. You might want to use 12 molar hydrochloric acid. You might want to print 3 of those. Then you might want to add another chemical. You might want to do sodium hydroxide. Note that you can just type in NaOH and you'll find sodium hydroxide. You might want to do a solution of sodium hydroxide that is, I don't know, 5 molar, and you might want to print 4 of those. And you might want to go for medium-sized labels. You might want to have borders, because you can print that easily on paper, and you can download the labels. And bingo, you now have, what have we got? 3 conc hydrochloric acid labels and 4 sodium hydroxide labels. So that's about the quickest way that we can make that happen for you. Let's go back now to our labeling, and we can show you with the custom labels. There are a few things here. First of all, we have this help function up the top. If you want to make a label for a commercial product, which might be, I don't know, some sort of glue or whatever that you're using, or a paint stripper or something, you can use that. We give you advice on how to do that. And basically, it's just a matter of going to the safety data sheet and entering here in the various fields and adding the appropriate pictograms and hazard statements as you like to make a label that fits with the SDS. In the case of mixtures, it's a little bit more complicated. You sort of have to add up the signal words and pictograms and hazard statements for each of the components of the mixture. And we explain how to do that here. And then you can create a label for that also. And you can also do labels for really anything. It doesn't have to be a chemical. You don't have to add any pictograms. And all of these text boxes here are able to accept free text. So you can do it for anything you like. And we've also added, as well as the pictograms, down here, we have the biohazardous infectious waste symbol. And you can add that So let's suppose you want to label a bag of dead rats that you want to throw out in the garbage. You can put that on it as well. So you can do really anything you like to make any label you feel that you want to create. That's labels, I think. Okay, now what operations do we want to show you? First of all, if you have a risk assessment that has been archived, you may need to reschedule it. Something might happen and you need to do it the next day or next week. Then you can just click on reschedule up the top here, and you can now just enter the new room, period, and day that it will be happening. And you have to sign down the bottom here so there's a record that a person did this who had authority to do that. And that will then reschedule the risk assessment to another event. The next one is, archiving risk assessments. Really, the goal is always to see these little filing cabinet icons. Once you see those, then you know that the risk assessment has been fully signed and converted to a PDF document, which is immutable and serves as a legal record. And you should be striving always to have that happen. Usually you need 2, but sometimes 3 signatures, as I said. And it's, if you like, that's the central operation to aspire to within RiskAssess. You should be aware also that you can do LabTech only risk assessments. If you create a new risk assessment here, then you can enter an experiment name, something like, let us say, PREP 2011 : preparation of dilute acid solutions. Okay, and except it's got another T in it. We fixed that one.
Do you want 2021 rather?
Oh, what, 211? How did I do that? Right, thank you. I'm living in the past. All right, 2021. So the idea is that you can create a risk assessment with a title like that, and you can sign it with the teacher's name as not applicable. Because, hey, this is a risk assessment that you are doing yourself, just preparing solutions that you'll be using for a whole bunch of classes. And also this risk assessment will be good for 12 months or until something changes, like your fume cupboard stops working and you have to do everything in the open lab and inhale all the fumes or something like that. That would be something where you would need to change the risk assessment. But everything stays the same. That'd be good for 12 months, unlike the experimental risk assessments, which have to have a new one for every event, every class doing every experiment, because things will be different. So as long as things don't change, risk assessments don't need to change until after a certain period, typically 1 year, when you would review your risk assessment and see if you could improve it. And the other trick is this PREP 2021. If you put that at the beginning of each of your preparation risk assessments, then it becomes really easy to find these in the library search. You just have to enter that and bingo, they'll all pop up. Anyway, I'll cancel that one and we'll go back to the home page. What else have I got here, Eva? What am I doing next? Backup. The annual review. Okay. At the end of each year, or possibly at the end of each teaching session within the year, it's a really good idea for a small group of people who are skilled and experienced to get together and review all the different versions of the one experiment that have been done in that year or in the teaching session, and try to create a best version of it, which you can then put into the best library here, and that becomes then the starting point for everyone for next year or next teaching session when it is being used. So that is very much within the spirit and, of course, the logic and the law regarding how you are meant to continually be improving your risk assessments. The next thing is what have I got? Backup. Okay, well, I've mentioned already that you need to back up your risk assessments, and I showed you in tools where you can do that. It's a good idea to do that at regular intervals, every month, every teaching session, or minimum at the end of each year, all the risk assessments that you have, and send them off to your IT people to be stored as long-term records. Because if anything ever happens, you've got a record to show that you carried out a risk assessment as required by law. Oh, delete. Interestingly, you can, of course, delete risk assessments, but they never really go. They hang around, and really, I guess a better way to think of it is you are hiding them from view. If you ever need to go to your deleted risk assessments, you just click in the search box and bingo, you have all of the ones that you've deleted in the past, and you can just click on these and open them up and bring them back from the dead. Next, if we go to the assets and bases, where are we here? We can show you the section down here where you enter the particular risk level. Now, note when you do this initially, when you do it initially, actually, it shows. Because I've been playing with this one before, it doesn't show. But when you go there initially, you'll see the third section down here. There'll be 3 sections showing, one for certification by teacher, one for certification by laboratory technician, one for approval by authorized person. Now, if the experiment is high risk or extreme risk, then that third box has to be completed. If, on the other hand, it is medium risk or it's low risk, you'll see that that third window doesn't appear. So that shows you what you need to do. If it's a high risk or extreme risk, then you need someone else who is an experienced person to have a look at it and check that the control measures you've put in place are adequate. Now, don't be frightened to put down high risk or even extreme risk for the inherent risk level. If you're doing something like addition of sodium metal to water, that's probably an extreme risk, because if you don't apply any control measures beyond the routine procedures in the laboratory, then this is a pretty dangerous thing to do. But if you put in place a series of control measures, then the idea is you bring down the risk to low risk with the control measures in place. So every school should be having quite a lot of experiments with high risk and extreme risk as the inherent risk level, because they are usually the more interesting experiments that involve chemicals that are potentially more hazardous, but they should be carrying it out with lots of control measures in place so that there is no injury to anyone. And hopefully this provides a more exciting learning experience for the students. What else do we have here now? Okay, multiple classes. How are we going for time?
Yeah,
We've got about 7 minutes left. Okay, so we're going sort of okay. Let's go to looking at multiple classes. If we go up the top of our risk assessment, you can see the first thing you can do is an author's update. Now, that is what you should do for an experiment, for a risk assessment of an experiment that is still being assessed, and maybe even the whole experiment is still being designed. Once the experiment has been created, of course, it should be signed and then becomes a PDF file that is archived and immutable. Now, at that point, you should create a modifiable copy so that someone else can come along, you later, or another person can come along and create a copy as the starting point for their own risk assessment. This is to save them the time of having to enter all the bits and pieces that are in here. And that's one of the joys of RiskAssess, that you don't have to always reinvent the wheel. But once you create a modifiable copy, you need to enter the new information about where, what, and when, and you also need to take into account what different conditions there may be in terms of the students and the location. Now, by law, you have to take into account all relevant matters. And these relevant matters for an experiment in a lab are going to include things like the facilities that are available, the behaviour of the students, so that's a really big one, students with allergies, students with special needs, and so on. So you do need to consider these. I mean, an experiment with a student in the class who has, let's say, an extreme allergy is a very different situation to having a class of students who don't have any issues of that kind. So that's the idea, and you need to create a modifiable copy of every class doing every experiment. And when you do that, it appears beautifully in the scheduling screen, and you have a record, an individual record that the teacher has done the assessment for that class, which might have a student with an extreme allergy, for example. Now, the other thing you can do, if you go to the author's update, there's a section here in the scheduling for multiple time slots. Now, that is designed for an experiment that spans several days or even weeks with different classes, and with the same class of students, but different time periods. And so it could be something like watching the germination of seeds, or it might be a complicated experiment that is going to require the students to prepare things the first week and then the second week do the actual experiment. So that's the idea of putting things in here. And you should not use that for another class, let's say, doing the same experiment, because the problem there is, of course, the other class may have something significantly different. There may be behaviour issues, or that lab may not have a fume cupboard. So if you do the same thing, you'll fumigate everyone. Or there might be someone who has an extreme allergy.
That's right.
Okay, so that's about it, I think. Okay, so what I'll do is I can unshare now, and we can go to questions. Now, hopefully you can all see me now. And what have we got? 3.5 minutes to go. Eva, what questions do I have that everybody wants to have
I'll just read that.
All right,
is the disposal information on the risk assessment, or is there a separate button?
Okay. The information automatically appears on the risk assessment within the block of data for a particular chemical or solution. It's down on the bottom right-hand corner beneath the standard handling procedures section.
So it's automatic.
So the answer is yes, it's automatic. It's always there. What isn't automatic is that you can go and have a look at some of the help documents that I showed you, which explain the whole thing, or go into the details of the waste containers.
How do you make something a best risk assessment?
I should have shown you that. All right, that's, look, I won't run back to the sharing screen to show it, but at the top of each risk assessment, there is a best risk assessment button that you can click. And I think it shows the little gold star there when you have clicked it. What else have we got?
And last one, what if you are the most qualified person? Can you sign as the authorised person?
Oh, interesting one. No, the logic really is that the teacher and the lab tech should be doing risk assessments of their own particular areas of activity, and there should be a third person who is an independent person and who will look at that with completely different eyes. I mean, this is the whole logic. You want people, especially with something that might be potentially hazardous, you want to have as many eyes as possible looking at it, so that you make sure you have adequate control measures in place so that anyone is harmed. So it could even be somebody else at a different school. One really good idea would be for the head teacher at 2 different schools to swap services to each other. And you can email the risk assessment to a third person, to the authorised person, to check on this. And so the email function at the bottom of each risk assessment is an easy way of doing that. And they get an email with a link that they can just click to go to the risk assessment. Okay, here we go. We have 1 minute left. Tra-la, come on, somebody else. We need another question.
Otherwise,
59 seconds.
Another question. Is it possible to make it so the risk assess can't be submitted unless signed by the teacher?
No. The answer for that is that sometimes risk assessments are started off by the lab tech, and indeed that's quite reasonable for the lab tech to rough out the risk assessment, and then the teacher comes in to look at it, to review it, to check it, and of course take responsibility for the section that is carried out in the laboratory under his or her supervision. So no, we can't do that because sometimes other people do the roughing out of the experiment. But logically, I mean, it is the teacher that would start.
We've got 14 seconds. I think we should thank everyone for coming.
Okay, I think we only have time to thank you. So thank you for being a wonderful audience for a most unusual presentation. And we hope we can see you live next year.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.